Shelley, something you actually mentioned was that you're using several tools for in-house for kind of mining data. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and then maybe Richard, you can follow up as well based on your experience working with different clients.
Sure. So we use a lot of different tools. Again, what tools we decide to use are going to be based on the needs of the legal matter. You know, if it's an investigation, if it's a full-blown litigation, I mean, that will dictate how we approach data generally. So you know, in terms of you know, how do you mine data down? What are the tools that you use for that? I do think that AI is a big piece of that, right? And so for me, that falls into two buckets. That's supervised and unsupervised AI. You know, I've seen the utilization of AI be most successful when everyone has a conversation about that up front, whether that's an internal matter or an external matter. You know, maybe that's a conversation that you need to have with your GC or others in the legal team to get them to feel comfortable with relying on something that doesn't have human eyes on it every step of the way, right? That's something I think that we all face. I feel really lucky in terms of, you know, my specific legal group. I think, you know, Tesla considers itself not just a manufacturer, but a technology company. And so my goal, I try to carry that into e-discovery. And so when we think about things like AI, you know, I've used that most in terms of priv review, and it's been really, really successful. But we've had instances, and I've seen trends with our adversaries asking for AI. And I love it when that happens, because I feel like that opens up a conversation, an honest conversation about, you know, what AI platform is going to be used, what will the criteria involved be, what will our output look like. And as long as everyone's on the same page, I think it can be hugely successful. You know, if you can align your adversaries, or if it's an internal matter, your legal team, about the use of AI, it can cut time. It can cut costs tremendously. I can tell you, I had one project where if we had gone the status quo route of collection, search terms, reviewing data, you know, with managed review teams, the use of AI cut that project by 2/3. So it can be incredibly helpful. And I think that AI is just part of our future. And it's not about, you know, should we be using it? It's about when we should be using it.
Oh, Anthony, I think you wanted me to comment on that. From my side, I think it's a lot of what Shelley said was spot on. I think, you know, there's a lot of tools in the tool chest, and, you know, which one to use is heavily dependent upon what the requirements of the case are. You know, it also depends on what the client's capabilities are, if they have it in-house, if they prefer to use in-house tools, or if they're open to using other things that might be more useful. So we also offer, you know, anything that I offer to my clients to kind of extend that, so that, you know, if they don't have the in-house capabilities, or maybe they do, but the people who are running it are too busy, which happens a lot, then they can leverage us or outside vendors to do it. But I am a very big proponent of using the right tool for the job. Like Shelley said, we actually have used AI mainly for privilege, but also for data classification, you know, inside relativity. And I've even used it in in forensic investigations with Magnet AI to categorize chats and things. And it's been, you know, it's interesting. I don't know that Magnet AI is a pure AI tool in the sense that we, you know, discuss other ones, but it certainly does help kind of raise things to the surface that you may have taken hours to actually find and put together yourself. So, you know, I do think that it is here to stay. And to Shelley's point about convincing people that it really works and is not just some magic thing is often the hardest part, but the conversation is good, and you can kind of explain, hey, well, you know, we actually have done blind tests of AI versus human reviewers, and the AI outperforms them. And so you start giving them statistics about that. And then they start opening up to the possibility of using it, you know, maybe at first doing some human QC afterwards. But once they start getting comfortable with it, you know, what I've seen is clients start asking for it on the next matter. And they say, hey, what was that thing we did the last time that worked really well? Can we do it here? And so you start to see, you know, suspicion turn into kind of like a testing phase, and then slow adoption, and then kind of trying to bring it into a normal workflow. And it is somewhat dependent upon the client's aptitude with technology. I would say that it is kind of across the board whether people are willing to wade into it. We still have clients who say absolutely not. I want eyes on everything. And that's, it could be personal preference or just they don't trust the machine yet, and they may come around, but we're seeing less and less of that, of saying, we need to put human eyes on everything that's going out the door. And we're seeing a lot more in-house counsel, be willing to embrace it. And also opponents, you can actually come to the table and say, hey, we're using continuous active learning in this case, and actually having, a meet and confer about, what you're doing to set those up and what the results are. So it does have, potential to reduce costs and improve efficiency and reduce risk. Ultimately you want to make sure that the things that are going out the door aren't privileged, they are relevant, and, are narrowly tailored to the requests you got. So yeah, I think that's, Shelley, I agree with pretty much everything you said there.
Let me follow up with you, Richard, really quickly. How do you build trust with AI and get your clients on board for maybe when they're either not initially or maybe they're a little bit more hesitant?
Yeah, so we have done blind studies with AI, particularly. I mean, we're with TextIQ's Priv AI, we essentially ran the software in parallel with a human review, and it didn't tell the reviewers we were doing it, and then kind of measured the results, and we kind of did sampling in comparison of what the output was from each the human review and the Priv AI designations for privilege. And I try to remember the statistics we had, but I think we have a white paper maybe with you guys about it if anyone wants it. But the results were basically the machine did better. It missed less privileged calls, and it actually found things that the humans didn't find. And I found that, once you put it in front of the client and say, hey, look, when you have 40 humans, each of which have individual decision-making capability on a body of documents, they're not always going to make the same judgment calls because everyone comes in with their own, biases and things into a review, and the machine doesn't. It's going to treat every document as its own thing. And so you kind of talk through, how that process works, and then show them the results of it and say, hey, look, this actually caught 12 documents that the humans missed, and that potentially saved you a clawback situation or worse if you hadn't found it. So, that's the way we've approached it, is basically saying, hey, okay, the client will say, it sounds nice, but how do I know it works? And then kind of say, well, why don't we do a proof of concept on a case of a sizable amount of documents and, see how it performs. And they say, well, all right, as long as I'm not paying for review twice, sure. And so you just have to kind of work that out and figure out like what are the what's the long-term benefit, and once you get through that and kind of sit down and have that conversation, you can kind of see that it's when you start seeing the real cost benefit of for example, not developing a priv log from scratch and instead being able to review it and just kind of edit. I think they start seeing that, hey, this is actually pretty viable, and they can tell that the output is quality, and at least that's how we've done it, and it's been very successful.
And you also mentioned kind of working with different business partners as well. How do you approach kind of working with the different people within the organization to make sure that you guys are partners in something versus more adversarial? And then maybe Katie, if you have something to add on to that too after, feel free.
Yeah, so I don't view any other business unit as adversarial, and maybe I misunderstood your question, but I do think that we link arms regularly, right? We want to understand what both sides are doing. So, for example, if I need data pulled off the shelf, right? I want to know exactly what they're doing. We've got several tools in-house for mining data. Whenever there's sort of a pre-culling situation with data before taking that data outside and putting it into a review database for outside counsel, I would have regular discussions, and everyone on my team would have discussions about what the other side is doing. And that oftentimes creates a collaboration session, right? Where we're saying, well, here's the end goal. This is what we're looking for. What can you do on your side to help us get there in a super cost-effective way? I think our goal is always to limit the amount of data leaving the servers. So that forces a collaboration, an ongoing collaboration conversation where we are working together for the same end result. And I think, we do that regularly with information security. We do that regularly with our compliance teams and other practice groups within legal, and then the various business units, right? We are all at companies that have data housed in different places, living in different places. That becomes part of information governance when you're mapping that and putting that matrix together. So I think you could never do that alone. It requires cross-functionality. And I think the teams that I cross-function with the most would probably be information security, compliance, and then whatever business unit is housing the data at the company.
I guess to piggyback on that, I would say, again, something that I really love about this space, and I'll just call it the data space broadly, is that it is very interdisciplinary. And when we need to address data-related issues, we need people from a lot of different areas of the company. So to that end, at MassMutual, we've recently stood up a privacy, data, and AI governance council, and that is made up of members from our law department, compliance department. It is chaired by our first line of defense business owner of data, privacy, and AI governance. We have our lines of business areas represented at the table. We have our data management people at the table, and we need that entire, we have audit there, we have risk there. We need that entire group of people to really have a holistic and effective conversation about the legal and ethical acquisition, use, storage, retention, transfer, and disposition of the company's data.
Thank you so much to our panelists for the great discussion today.